The art of psychological self-defense. How to protect yourself from deceitful manipulation. You, I, and everyone will be manipulated. At least to some degree. Life, including other people and organizations, molds, shapes, and conditions us. And if we don't understand how this happens, we're more vulnerable to being manipulated by wicked forces, anything from the predatory narcissist to a parasitic cult or other form of toxic groupthink. In this piece we'll talk about some of the ways that it can happen. The hidden persuaders that can control our emotions. The art of psychological self-defense. How to protect yourself from deceitful manipulation. You, I, and everyone will be manipulated. At least to some degree. Life, including other people and organizations, molds, shapes, and conditions us. And if we don't understand how this happens, we're more vulnerable to being manipulated by wicked forces, anything from the predatory narcissist to a parasitic cult or other form of toxic groupthink. In this piece we'll talk about some of the ways that it can happen. The hidden persuaders that can control our emotions. There are hidden persuaders all around us in life. When we are young, we like to think that we are different, somehow immune to the psychological pressures that bend, manipulate, and condition other people. We are not like that. Are we? But part of real growing up is starting to see how you yourself are led by the environment, influenced by other people, and driven by your personal needs. People are easily influenced precisely because we share innate human characteristics that render us all susceptible, to a point. Of course, some people are naturally more prone to succumb and some have higher levels of natural immunity to the infection that is psychological pressure, and that can make us do things we would normally never think of doing. But assuming that we are already immune is the surest way of catching the disease. Consider this scenario. Would you feed your children poison? It's 1978, in Guyana, South America, and you are a loyal member of Jim Jones's cult, the People's Temple. There you stand, in the middle of Jonestown, as Jones commands you to drink poison Kool-Aid, but only after first ensuring your children have drunk it and died. What do? Well, of course you don't do it. Who is he to tell you to end it all? You are not a robot to be ordered about. But an astounding 900 people simply followed his instructions. People who wanted to live and wanted their children, wives and husbands to live. Why did they do it? Why too did men and women allow themselves to be sexually abused by this man? Why did they agree to sell their homes and give all their money to his People's Temple? Were they of unusually low intelligence? Were they completely crazy? No. Many of them were highly skilled and intelligent people. Or was Jim Jones a more highly skilled manipulator of human emotionality? Did he instinctively know how to push the human need buttons and so string people along even to the extent that they would poison their own children? This is an extreme example, obviously, but the way Jim Jones used psychology to grab and maintain such immense power is something we can all fall victim to, albeit in much less dramatic ways. Let's take a look at how this happens, and maybe these are points we should all be taught in school. Jonestown has happened many times, and will happen again. It may go by a different name, but we will see the same psychological mechanisms at play. Understanding these mechanisms can help make us immune not just to the grosser psychological manipulations of a cult leader but also to the subtler counterproductive psychological conditioning that we all take as part and parcel of everyday life. The more we can be aware of and understand these forces, the more control we can exert over them, and the more truly free we can become. Let's start by taking a closer look at Jim Jones. Anatomy of a Master Manipulator. Jim Jones was a master of appearing to give people what they needed. And this is the crucial point to grasp. Sure, he was passionate, and his utter self-belief, Psychopathic fearlessness and unwavering certainty were intoxicating for many. But it wasn't just these personal qualities that ultimately led hundreds to their doom. In order for someone to manipulate, they must target elements within a person that are vulnerable to manipulation. Beware the person that gives you what you want. If you see me as your friend, I'll be your friend. If you see me as your father, I'll be your father, for those of you that don't have a father. If you see me as your savior, I'll be your savior. If you see me as your God, I'll be your God. As quoted by Jim Jones. If someone comes along and seems too good to be true, well, they just might be. If they suddenly seem to or promise to fulfill so much in you that had previously been lacking, you may feel overwhelmingly drawn towards them. That is the time to be cautious. So, what are the needs that Jim Jones seemed to and perhaps did for a while fulfill in his followers to instill such loyalty and fear of being cast out from his temple? Our primal human needs can fulfill or destroy us. We all have primal emotional needs, as well as physical ones, which make us uniquely human. Each and every one of us has these needs, to varying degrees depending on our distinct personalities. If your essential and fundamental psychological needs as a human being are not met adequately in your life, then you may suffer. Many people, even many therapists, can overlook these needs or properly take them into account within themselves and other people in their lives. But Jim Jones focused on them. Trying to meet your emotional needs is instinctive and unconscious. Unless you understand what is happening and respond appropriately, you will latch on to any source that appears to satisfy these needs. What that means is that if someone seems to meet your emotional needs, and especially if they start to convince you that only they can meet your needs, they can gain emotional power over you. Here is a list of basic primal human needs. Your needs include the security of a safe environment in which to develop, giving and receiving attention, a sense of autonomy and control, emotional connection to others, a sense of being part of a wider community or something larger than yourself, friendship, fun, love, and intimacy, a sense of status within social groupings, which includes feeling important in some way, a sense of competence and achievement, and lastly, meaning and purpose arising from creative and intellectual challenges. If any of these needs are not adequately met, you will feel strangely attracted to anything that promises to supply what is missing. But by simply knowing that this is happening can save you no end of trouble. It's too easy and simplistic to dismiss the rise of the Nazis as evil. Certainly the effects were evil. But the causes consisted in the universal needs that seemed to be met in the populace during Hitler's initial rise, along with other influences to be mentioned in a moment. To casually dismiss people who are sucked in by these ideologies as stupid or wicked is to misunderstand how human need works in the world. We are all susceptible. Many of Jones's followers were poor, disaffected people who were not leading satisfying lives or meeting their original basic needs in healthy ways. They were people facing uncertain futures. People with negative self-images. People with no sense of purpose or meaning and little sense of community or status. Jim Jones offered the overwhelming promise of certainty, company, divine purpose, community, self-respect, and feelings of security inside the cult. And there must have been some really great times, because eventually they followed Jones, like some modern-day Pied Piper, into oblivion. The drive to meet our needs is immense. If you ever find yourself asking questions like how could anyone fall for that old line? How could I have been so stupid? Why do they believe such nonsense? How could we have been conned like that? Remember the primal human needs. When you wonder what someone sees in the person you can't believe they're with, try to see what needs that person may seem to be meeting for them, even if it's simply the need for challenge and excitement. The clearer we are about how we can be led by our needs, the more honest we can be with ourselves, and the less we will have to try to find a rational argument for any choices made from a sense of lack. We all need quality attention and strive to meet that need somehow, but our thirst for it can blind us to the potentially disagreeable aspects of the person, or thing, that is offering us this attention. There is commonly a dark side to all of our human needs. The clearer we are about how we can be led by our needs, the more honest we can be with ourselves, and the less we will have to try to find a rational argument for any choices made from a sense of lack. We all need quality attention and strive to meet that need somehow, but our thirst for it can blind us to the potentially disagreeable aspects of the person, or thing, that is offering us this attention. There is commonly a dark side to all of our human needs. The emotional drive is so powerful that it will enlist the help of the conscious mind to construct compelling, seemingly logical arguments to support what you feel compelled to do. Jones's followers too would certainly have developed a belief system around the cult, and constructed what they believed were rational arguments for sticking with it. Few would have been clear-minded or honest enough in the moment to understand how Jones had used their emotional needs against them. It's easy to say afterwards, "How could I have been so stupid?" But extreme incidents like the Jonestown Massacre demonstrate just how overridingly powerful the drive to meet our needs is. It can completely overwhelm clear thinking. Just as a person dying of thirst in a desert might put a bottle of bleach to their lips if it was offered to them. Because when you become so desperate then, any liquid might seem as though it could save you. But it's not just through learning about cults that we can see how we can all be influenced like this. What makes a person die to buy into the lie? Robert Cialdini, the Regents Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Marketing at Arizona State University, studied how and why people comply, or buy, in business and life. He identified a set of principles which he termed the weapons of influence. He was looking at business interactions, but his principles apply equally well to cults and manipulative relationships of any kind. And if you look closely, it's not hard to see the link between his principles and the basic needs outlined in this article. Cialdini's Principles on Weapons of Influence is a topic we will share in our next issue. Be sure to check back with us. So, until then, here's to your good health.